together by combining historical, climate, food, and economic data so you can make informed decisions as we shift into a new era. Here's what was, this is what's coming. Our world is never going back to 2019, so what will the new era look like? And most importantly, what is immediate that will affect the pocketbook and the outlook into next year so we can all get ready? Thank you for joining. I'm your host, David DuByne. Right along here with Ransom Godwin taking us through the next 2 hours. What type of changes do you see around us? Like I said, it's not going back to 2019. You might even be happy if it's 2022 and it doesn't progress any further than that. As we look around, a lot of things that were projected for our world are now stalled, stuck in the mud. The ending of another show overlaying here. Finish up, I guess.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.
All right, that wasn't our program. We're still live. It's all good.
Twilight Zone. It's the Twilight Zone.
And Ransom, it seems like we're getting some advertisements overplaying. Are you hearing that too?
In the paranormal?
Yeah.
Murder mystery. Real natural law.
Well, we should let the soft voices of some other ads blend in to the intro.
Every Monday night.
I can't get my voice to go that high, even if I do karaoke.
On Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Risk thinking. Welcome to the crypt.
The secret kindergarten is here for the young children
we
of the
don't have
world.
a secret kindergarten.
The best program on the radio for kids, dealing with the most important topics in the whole universe. Fairy tales, music and movement, numbers, plants, animals, fun, colors, insects. Take care.
Ounces of
Cast
gold.
your ears out
We have our own
to catch
secret
a story
mint.
from the world of other young things. Reach out, up, under, and over. Sing a song. Talk about feelings. Just remember the magic word. The magic word is no. Step on into the secret kindergarten. Saturdays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on Revolution Radio.
All right, thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And yeah, we're going to get back to your host.
Yay, and thank you for everybody sticking with us. That usually goes over the break, not into the show, so away we go.
Man.
I sound like I'm rhyming like Mr. Seuss. But I'm your host, David DuByne, right here with Ransom Godwin tonight, taking you through the next couple of hours, like what our world was supposed to be. There's a lot of things I'm noticing now that are not manifesting the way they were supposed to be in terms of taking us down this route into the Agenda 2030 assured goals. So I really think there's hope that we can break free from all of this, I'm going to say, psychological conditioning to get you to believe that these people have so much power that their end goals are inevitable. Resistance is futile. Except, you know what? I'm watching wind project after wind project collapse, have funding pulled. Also, the EVs are down. That's electric vehicles. I was working on that for a story tonight. Volkswagen had 50 reduction in the orders for the electric vehicles. And this seems to be across the board for Toyota and anybody else that's manufacturing electric vehicles. So this whole transit toward it. You see the fires. Everybody's terrified of their garages catching on fire with this thing. Barely a station to be found where you can recharge. And if you do, you got to wait 6-10 hours in line. That's a great one. I love being on the road with the wife and 2 kids and getting stuck for 3 hours having to charge outside of the additional 8 hours the kids are in the car driving to grandpa and grandma's place. That's always extra fun. Add an extra 3 hours of 2 kids cooped up in the back seat. Awesome. These are the fun things you get with an electric vehicle. But you can see all this crumbling right now. So not enough minerals, not enough rare earth minerals, not enough copper. They have to mine as much copper as been mined in the last 2,000 years in the next 10 years to make all of these green dreams come true. So I'm so thankful that there is finally a break that we can visibly see into this agenda. And I really believe that was a rock thrown through the glass window or window storefront of fake mannequins behind it. This gives me such hope that these wind projects are being pulled because they're non-profitable, and even the wind energy market across Europe has cratered to the point where they're suspending new investments into wind projects and canceling other offshore wind projects, and the electric vehicles are no longer being ordered. I see hope at the end of the tunnel, Ransom. Thank you for joining me tonight. Lots to talk about in terms of, we're going to try to stay away from the Middle East for now because you can get that information being forced down your throat, this war propaganda forced down like a feeding tube. So anyway, we're going to talk about something different, more fun, a little bit different, and still try to direct your eyes and ears to where the world still's moving, but you're not being shown because everything's focused over in the Middle East. So Ransom, thanks for joining again.
I was rolling at the beginning, man. I joined, and then the ads started coming on. That was pretty funny, really. It's kind of hard to get away from the Middle East, ain't it, though? But I'll try to do that, even though, it's kind of obvious everything intersects with that. And you can just skip after. Let's just skip after they let the, conflicts around the world, so to speak, run their courses. Then what? Right?
Less oil.
Right. There's going to be less everything, and they know that. That is kind of the end goal, actually. I mean, among lots of other programs going on, the main end goal is to reduce us. So I don't want to be reduced. So I was thinking, we could talk about how wintry it's going to be this winter. I mean, everybody got a taste of it very early, of the global warming goodness right away, right? So I was out there all
so
day.
Good, so good.
Right, I was getting my tropical plants, away from the global warming goodness that killed all the vines and tomatoes and everything. I'm lucky that I actually grew a tomato forest, because so many tomato plants died. They kind of made a little barrier over the smaller plants, and all of those survived because they kind of had a blanket of dead plants that covered them up. I even found a watermelon plant that somehow survived in the grass, from it wasn't freezing here, but it was like a degree off or something like that. And it was a pretty interesting thing, because think about it. Everybody was in their fall warm days, and then snap. Talk about a cold snap, and talk about a cold front, right? Because it blew down here, and I live probably 5 miles from the cliff of the mountains, where we go from 4,995 feet up to maximum of 12,000 feet at Sierra Blanca. But right where I'm at, it's like 11,000 something, and only 3 miles difference. So you could drive 3 miles on the road, and you're already gaining elevation up. And it was 34 degrees, just, 8 miles away from where it was 72 degrees. It's a good thing we don't live in a tornado prone area, and there was not really much moisture up. But think about that difference. So if you are on one side of the line, you probably still have a little bit or some crops left. But if you're on the other side of the line, that stuff's gone. That stuff froze. And that was deep into Texas. Did you see the nice little stretch of global warming that happened there. So how do you think the rest of the winter is going to roll out here? I was about to look up the classic Farmer's Almanac prediction for the year. But I have a feeling we're going to get a chilly, a bunch of these cold snaps, so to speak, this year. And it'd be smart if people, didn't prep for World War III, but just think about something a little closer to home. What if the power just goes out? What if there's a lot of snow? What if there's a real winter coming? I mean, do you have enough supplies to deal with that? Because, unfortunately, I've been noticing a trend that's part of the overall, obviously, plan, but that's more and more homeless people and more people trying to live in their cars and more people trying to just live outside because they can't afford things like rent, insurance, and all the burdens of life that pile up on the average American consumer. So they've resorted to trying to live outside. And the term off-grid is, I'm going to say big time being misused by people saying they live off-grid. They don't live off-grid. They've made themselves homeless and susceptible to the environment, which I have a feeling they're going to find out this year. So a lot of people that are living outside that thought it was real cool and they thought, last winter wasn't that bad. They might not like the way this winter is going to go.
Yeah, just a quick, I'll add on to your update here. I'm out in southeast Tennessee, right at the border of Georgia and North Carolina. Now, last night in Asheville, which is less than 100 miles from here, it was 22 degrees Fahrenheit. And that is like a record smasher there. And there were hundreds and hundreds of cold records broken along the East Coast. Now, Macon, Georgia, man, you're talking south in the United States here. Got down to 26 degrees Fahrenheit last night. And Macon's a good 2 hours south of here driving. And I lost all my tobacco plants. I lost all my Moringa oleifera. Now, we knew this cold front was coming, so we'd cut back almost everything because it's time to change the garden anyway. So those of you out there, if you're still lucky enough to have tomato plants straggling, which we did, I'm not sure if the flowers that were on there would just fall off and the tomato plants will continue to grow. And it's supposed to be warm for the next, 3 to 4 weeks. So what's going to happen with that? We were in the replanting phase anyway, moving over to like kohlrabis and the spinach and the kales and the mustard greens. These kind of really deep green, what else? Brussels sprouts and cabbage. This is what we were replanting our garden with right now anyway, and a bunch of different types of lettuces. And we were rolling the garden over. So for us to pull it in, I couldn't believe how much produce we got. We planted, we took, a shipping crate, those kind of crates, and we had 6 little squares inside the crate once we knocked a few extra pieces out of it to give us some space. So inside there, we planted a total of 8 pepper plants, and we had different kind of pepper plants. We had the cheese peppers, the like sweet snacking peppers, and then the back 2 had cayenne peppers. We got so many that we filled, mixing bowls, like 5 mixing bowls full of peppers, and then that wasn't even the hot peppers that we grew in a different section of the garden, because sometimes they can cross over and you'll get if your hot peppers are too close to your sweet peppers, you might end up with something you didn't expect. But Ransom, I could not believe the amount of peppers we got. But the reason we grew them was for pest. We're going to do our own pest control with them. And we also got our dogs digging around a lot of places. So we wanted to do our own cayenne pepper powder and then have our own supply of, hot stuff to keep the dogs out of areas. So if you know where they're digging, you can put a bunch of cayenne pepper in there and they will stop digging pretty immediately after that. But I was shocked on how much we got. And then we had to harvest everything out there. So we had our Malabar spinach, which we had to take all the leaves off. You couldn't eat that. We have literally mountains of green veg that we need to try to get through from all the celeries and what else do we have out there? The broccolinis and the rest of the okra that came in, and some squash that we needed to get off. We had some melons that needed to come in also. But it's just a huge, bountiful harvest, and we weren't expecting to get all that at the exact same time. So now what's our problem? Well, we got the dehydrator out because that's just going to go to waste if we don't get it dehydrated or stir fried for us to eat. But that's way too much veg to eat, even if you love veg. So we're trying to figure this out. And this is a great thing about abundance in a harvest period. Another thing to think about is the food pricing with the oil rationing possibly coming in. We'll talk about that later. The first things to be rationed as they were in World War I and World War II, it's exactly the same. So I can't see why it'd be different now. Food is going to be one of those, depending if it's meat or fish or whatnot. So what if you have an abundance of product right now where, we go to the Amish farm and we got 20 pounds of tomatoes for $14. Well, what do we do with all those tomatoes? The butternut squash also, it's like 30 pounds of butternut squash for $15. These are the kind of bargains you can get. And especially if you buy more and you say, hey, can I buy, 5 boxes? They'll give you even a better discount. But once you have so much produce or veg or whatever it is, then see, this is the thing a lot of people aren't planning on or thinking about is we got a heap of stuff. Now, how do we preserve it? How do we get it into a different form so it doesn't go bad so we can still use it later? We can rehydrate it. We could grind it into a powder. We could can it. There's a lot of things. Well, what's on your list of being able to preserve the mass amounts of foods? Like I'll tell you another thing I learned from last year and the year before. To preserve pumpkins, all you need is a bed of hay or straw, but they can't touch. Like the skins cannot touch. You need about 1 inch of air gap between them. And as long as you put those pumpkins on either straw or hay, depending, you cut it yourself or you bought it from a store, don't care. You got to have probably 1 inch thick of something below it. Make sure it doesn't touch the sides of wherever you're keeping it in, like if you have it on racks out in your garage or whatnot. And those things will stay for 8 months. But you let them touch together and a month in, it's already rotting on the sides. Same with any of the gourds, the butternut squash, any of these types of things. The secret is keeping them a little bit apart and on something dry. I'm sure you could probably use cardboard. But think about if there's food shortages or food rationing and you have all that abundance, and this is the cheapest time you're going to buy things. So we were getting the old heirloom corn too. They call it Indian corn. A lot of people like to buy it for decoration because it's the pretty color, really beautiful, like starburst corns, deep purple corn, just very unusual. It's not the yellow or the white corn that you normally see. It's these unusual striations or just blasted colors inside the ears. But we bought that last year, and what we did is we picked our favorite colors of like the deep purple because it makes a really nice deep blue, like almost indigo corn chip. And we grew that. So, and we didn't let it cross-pollinate the best we could, and we had some amazing luck of pure 100% of the same color that we planted. So we can grind that. But you can also go buy it because the Indian corn right now, after it's finished, people are probably going to throw it away. I don't know many people that keep it. A lot of moths get into it if you try to keep it over the winter. So you're going to come into an abundance of this like specialty corn. It's great for grinding, by the way. So how many things do you know how to store? And it's really good practice. I'm glad this cold front came through for a lot of reasons. A, we needed to bump up our row cover skills. You're going to learn more every time a thing happens. And we had this thing called toothache plan. It's a medicinal, and it actually is more like a toothache. And, cutting all those flowers, and you end up with like 150, small, they're really tight, like button flowers. Now what? Well, they're great when they're green and they have the water in it and they chew and they really numb your mouth incredibly. But after they're dried now, we're trying to figure out different uses for these. So tincture it up, perhaps. So it's making me think way outside the box in terms of we only had 2x4s and some thicker wood because we're always building stuff. I didn't think about those little, 1 1/4 or 1x1s to be able to make a square to go all over the raised beds. So, trying to bump up my skill also of protecting the plants. But anyway, we got hit. It's going to be incredibly cold tonight. We had to build something, an emergency shelter for our ducks and geese. They were frozen in the morning. They were stiff when they were moving around. Turkeys were fine. Chickens were fine because they roosted up together and snuggled as a big pack of like 15 of them squeezed into a little thing. They kept warm together. But these are real issues. Like if your power goes out, it can go out for a bit, but in the middle of winter, what's going to happen to your house? Like, Ransom, maybe you can tell me a little bit better about this. Remember last year's super freeze in Texas where the power cut off? Like, I remember seeing some images of people's pipes busting in the houses. Like, how prevalent was that? Was it one house or was it 100 houses? Because we have PEX running through our walls here. Because when I bought this place, I remodeled a bit in here, and we took there really wasn't any copper too much. There was like a couple areas that had copper, like real just one or two pipes. The rest of it was that old, plastic. And I was like, hell no, PEX is bad enough. But even if it freezes, it'll expand. So we got PEX running through the house. So I'm not too worried about a freeze between the walls. But for real, in the middle of winter, if your power goes out for 2 weeks, you better hope that it stays cold enough that you can repair those pipes before they start dripping water everywhere. But Ransom, I don't know. Tell me about that freeze. Like, what kind of damage was done to the homes down there during the deep freeze in Texas last year?
That was a bunch of houses that weren't built to go down to low temperatures and have the power off simultaneously. I mean, they were newer, buildings and houses that had no insulation around the water because it never drops for very long that far, into the cold areas. Like, I know, for example, in the town I live in, this wasn't the same instance, but a different cold snap that happened. It got really cold, and it got down to close to 0 degrees in the valley here. And everybody's PVC pipe fittings busted because that's what they use, because we live in a place where it very rarely drops down to be that cold. So everybody's, wells and connections to the faucets outside and all that stuff just busted. And I know Home Depot made lots of money, but that's what everybody was doing for like 2 weeks, is just fixing their water. I planned for that ahead because we live in the, high desert. So traditionally, a long time ago, it got real cold here. And that's what they're actually expecting this year for New Mexico, is a colder than normal winter. But we do have variations of high elevation. And I saw that article that you sent with the deer all sitting in the yards. And that's actually really common around here, especially in the mountain areas, because it'll get cold in the forest and the sun doesn't shine in there. So the deer and elk and wild horses, at least where I live, will all come out and just sit in someone's yard, and they'll dig around in the snow and just eat all their nice green grass that's still alive. Plus the houses are warm and the concrete and all that stuff. The animals are smart. They just come in there and, try to use up the resources. I'm sure that freaks people out, but think about that. You get a good indication of how much meat is around you, for sure. Texas, though, what was funny about that is I took a trip to Colorado during that exact cold snap that happened in Texas, and they were saying that their wind powered generators froze and broke. And I drove through New Mexico where it was cold. It was extremely cold, and the generators that are on the way to where I was going were working just fine, which means that there was some shenanigans going on. And plus, they knew that it was going to go out too. And I'm not saying it was on purpose, but when they, let's see how to put this. They limited on purpose the amount of energy that Texas could use right when they needed it. So that was I'm going to say that was a man-made catastrophe. And the end result was, Home Depot and Lowe's and all those other stores made a lot of money off of that out of nowhere. But think about that, is all of those people were caught off guard. Now think of, forget the water for a minute. They didn't have electricity, so all their food went bad and stuff. So they got a taste of what people in northern areas have to deal with more often. But even in the northern areas, they don't build things the way that they used to. And all of the older type buildings and apartment complexes that used to have the furnace, and you'd have the furnace and you'd turn on the hot hot water from the radiator, steam, to warm your rooms and stuff. They don't have that. I mean, everything's electric, cheapy Chinese. It breaks, and I'm not blaming the Chinese specifically. I just mean that it's that throwaway type of appliances, I guess you could call it, like heaters and all that stuff. They only last a year or two and they break. They don't even sell those old ones. I guess they were too dangerous. You remember the little box ones that had the super red glowing bands of metal that would heat you up? I don't even think you can find that type of stuff.
My grandparents had one of those.
Yeah, I don't even think you can find that now, right? But all of the stuff is weirdly like I know this sounds silly, but yesterday I wanted to use my oven, and we got a new oven because the other one broke, and this is one of those smart ovens. And I still have the old one because it just needed a computer panel or something like that. But the new one, I couldn't even figure out how to set the timer. And there's a little logo on it that says I could connect it to the phone because, I guess I'm one of those old people that doesn't understand things now. And I'm not even that old. I couldn't figure it out, man. I just timed it, with the clock in my eyeballs instead of worrying about it. But what's weird about all that stuff is it's interconnected and it's spying on you. So our refrigerator talks to our microwave that talks to our stove. It's really bizarre. Now I still have the old stuff because, it's old and you can't do nothing to it remotely as far as I know. But all that stuff can just conveniently go out along with the power or malfunction because it's not getting the right juice. And I noticed where I live, I have a lot of brownouts. So you go to the store and you get all of these new LED bulbs that promise you 5 or 7 years. We're going through those things faster than the old ones because they can't take an electric shock. The old ones could handle that, but they couldn't handle a kinetic. If you knocked it, it would bust. But these LED ones, I mean, we're replacing them all the time, and it's a big scam. And it seems like that just ties into the overall green movement of things that just don't work. We know that the electric wind generators, they don't work. They're toxic. They break. They bury them. It's all a scam. And then on top of that, last week I showed the article about the auto manufacturers admitting that they're going to be pulling back on EV productions because it just doesn't work. They're unreliable. They're too expensive. They're only making them because of mandates of how they want to change how human beings live. And the idea is not for you to have your own private, green, efficient car that takes you where you want to go. The idea is for you to get on your feet, Fred and Barney, and walk to where they have things metropolitan disease across every area of where somebody lives. So they'll have everything there where you go to see the clinic. It's an urgent care place where you don't really see a doctor. They'll have all of the boxed food restaurants and fast food chains, and they'll have you a Walmart and like a Dollar General or something like that. And you need to just ride a bike, ride the bus, or walk. They don't want you actually traveling around everywhere. Think about this. I mean, why would they want you to be able to get in your car and travel to somewhere else where the weather stayed good and go buy a bunch of produce that's still fresh, or have a trade system that's outside of their control where you trade the goods and the produce and the meats that are in season when they're in season. And they don't want you to eat like that because that's how royals eat. If you there's a couple of interviews out there with Charles and his mother, different ones, I've seen them, where they talk about their diet, where they never eat vegetables that are out of season. They don't eat the common stuff for that, the poor people, peasants eat, like garlics and onions, because those are grass. And, they try to use and it's funny because, a lot of people think they're vampiric or lizard people or all kinds of weird theories out there about them. But they don't like garlic and onions. They don't eat that. That's common man food. And if it's fruits and vegetables, they only eat it in season. And on top of that, they have their own gardeners grow organic food just for them so they can eat it fresh. But they don't want you to live that way. You need that prepackaged, nanobot, plastic, contaminated, who knows where it came from stuff. The food-like stuffs, they're at the stores, and we can't even get too specific because the robot man, the evil algorithm guy that tells on you will get us in trouble for just, explaining things in a normal way.
Do you think an EMP would fry the nanobots? Do you think an EMP would disable nanobots because it would, as every other thing, that would stop electrically? Do you think the nanobots would be affected by the EMP if there were to be one, either from the sun or from something higher up, man-made discharged nuclear weapon 300 miles up or so?
Well, that all depends on how contaminated or saturated. There's a whole science behind saturation, right? And law enforcement uses that when they pull over people because it's how the dog finds things, and they can even tell how long ago it was going on by the way the dog reacts because they're trained so good. And it's the science of saturation. So if, let's say, if there was some way that they infected the entire world with nanobots, even an EMP couldn't get it because there would be nanobots and crevices and cracks that protected it. There would be nanobots under metal, for all the same reasons that people could save their own equipment, and not everything would actually, be broken. Some things would be protected. And let's not forget, I don't think they care what you're doing out here. If some kind of event like a solar event or an actual EMP that was human made or even extraterrestrial made, let's just go there, knocked out all of our infrastructure that's electronic. The continuity of government, people are hiding within these caves and different facilities underground, under the ocean, and et cetera, maybe even off world. I mean, if you want to stretch what they could be doing with the billions and billions and billions of dollars that disappear into black budget projects that the taxpayer never gets to see what happened with. It's very possible that they don't care. Matter of fact, it's likely that they don't care what's going on topside while they're doing that, because they have what's that continuity that they're talking about. They have all the food, they have all the research, scientists, equipment, et cetera, et cetera. And if we're talking about what we would do, obviously, if an EMP, they have giant think tanks of some of the smartest people in the world that get unlimited budgets to build things to protect them against that. So I always thought it was a joke to think that the powers that be are going to be not part of the aftermath of anything. Of course they will be. And if it's so big that even they can't deal with it, then, we're back to, I don't know, sometime way back before the Neolithic times when there was just a few people walking around the surface of the earth about to start a new civilization.
Yeah, perhaps we could just rent a parking space as our home, and that's the big rage right now. By the way, you might be protected from some elements or some cosmic radiation being under that much concrete deep down into the parking garage. This is, I was trying to dovetail it to what are your thoughts further on about, trying to live in the elements and everything. It's incredibly difficult. Because we were thinking last night, we were just doing a mind experiment. What happened if there was an emergency? We had to leave our house and it was 27 degrees in the middle of the evening. Like, let's say 2 a.m., a landslide came down or something, right? How difficult that would be if you were just semi-clothed, like you got bounced out of bed. Like, how quickly could you rig something up to keep yourselves warm or start a fire or do something at that critical juncture? To have a fire that might give away your position. So how else are you going to stay warm other than having a fire? I was hanging out with Wild John over in the UK, and he's like, yeah, you got to bury yourself with a bunch of weeds and leaves and stuff, and your body heat will warm that little pocket while you're in there. But people, this is the true thing here. I was actually talked about this last week in a video I did. The new big rage is those that are homeless or those that only have a car will go and rent a parking space now, and they have security going around the place. So it's much safer for those that are living in their cars. So they all come together in terms of safety. And there's also guards that wander the place in the parking garages, and you rent out your specific stall. And then they've installed bathrooms / toothbrush. I don't know what it is some sort of areas where you can use the bathroom while you stay in the parking garage in your car. This is the new thing. where they're upgrading and renovating larger bathroom spaces in the parking garages for people to come in and live in their car overnight, or on a longer term contract from 7 days to a month, you can rent a space. And people actually live there in their cars full time. And even if you have the luxury to have the petrol and then leave and then come back, it's still your assigned space. So nobody will pull in there. And, you know, just the whole metrics of that thing is kind of scary for me to think about, and just an unnerving on our economies collapsing to the point where, as tent cities were set up, or I forget the name, not Bougainville's, Hoovervilles, you know, in the Great Depression, where people would come together for safety and live in certain areas before they would move on. And now we're experiencing something very similar to the Great Depression, where people are now living in their cars with guarded areas in terms of safety, but, you know, they could go and have an escape vehicle at any time. You know, the parallels are really startling looking back at the Great Depression. If there was not a, you know, they keep mincing words here and saying, well, it's a recession, oh, it's deflation, oh, it's inflation. And if you went by the metrics, except for the giant crash, we're very close to mimicking a Great Depression. Now, if the oil were to be cut off from the Middle East, which again, you can't hardly talk about anything without circling back to it, it would definitely disrupt things. So I had a great talk with Andy Schechtman yesterday. He and I talked for about an hour, and we did an interview, and he's the CEO of Miles Franklin. And he's the first guy I really heard talk about de-dollarization and the BRICS nations and how they were assembling at the center point of the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which is similar to some of the pacts and treaties that the Western nations have for mutual agreements amongst nations. They'd set out their own many a year ago with Kazakhstan, Russia, Iran, all these nations together as their own defense pact and also economic pact. That's the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. But the base of it, the bedrock and the cornerstone, is the Shanghai Gold Exchange. And they are the ones that are offering about $100 more per ounce to try to siphon a lot of gold into China. Because the more gold they have, the more you're going to believe that their money's worth something if they back their money by gold. The old way that we did in the Depression before it was confiscated. And he started talking about the stock prices, and I was asking him after that about if oil went to $250 or $200, an enormous amount of people would get blown out on their trade of the derivatives. And he was like, oh, absolutely, that would cascade into make the 1929 crash look like a 1-point dip. And then he starts talking about quadrillions of dollars in just derivatives on the oil markets. And a lot of people are hedging. And that's what normally companies do. And he was trying to explain the whole mechanism of hedging as a company, because them as a gold and silver broker, they could not be in business as a cash-only, cash and carry kind of business. Because when they buy their gold round or their 1 ounce gold round or 1 ounce silver rounds, whatever, 10-ounce bars, they're locked in at a market price. Now, if that market price goes down, they're not going to be able to sell their product without losing money. But they have to continually sell product in order to generate revenue. And he was saying, you know, they're hedging also at all times to make sure that they can protect themselves. And he's like, we go short, we go long, we do it both. We try to cover each direction and we follow it literally. You know, we'll be putting stops in and up, down, moving every 5 minutes in the day. They have an algorithm that does this for them, that adjusts the pricing. But he's like, if there was a significant event in the Middle East that took off the Mideast oil, there's a lot of people that don't have the money to pay for these algorithms that would be set out because the price would jump so fast, but they're, you know, positioned to go short to cover in case the price of oil drops, that they're still going to make money or break even on it. That if the price runs away from, say, $80 to $150 in a single day, he's like, you would not even believe how much money would be lost on people who couldn't get out fast enough. But the thing is, you need somebody to buy that contract on the way out also. So if there was a flood to market where, let's say there's 1,000 people that want to sell their short contracts, but there's only 800 buyers, then that means 200 people get stuck with riding the roller coaster on the way down, however much money that is lost, and everything's derivatized 1,000 to 1. And he was saying, even with our small inventory, we could, if we wanted to push the envelope, could derivatize $1 trillion off of our gold and silver in-house. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You only have a few $1 million of inventory. And he's like, yeah, we do. But if you want to roll it and derivatize it and take 1,000 to 1 and then get an insurance contract on that and then reinsure that and rebuy it 1,000 to 1, he's like, oh, we could easily roll up to $1 trillion in derivatives off our, several million of physical gold as the insurance policy on that, because it's physical gold. It's a tier 1 asset. And he was trying to explain all that. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, these guys do it all the time. It's nothing for them because they've never been burned yet to the point of prices rising so fast that they've lost control. Because currently, up to this point, all control has been maintained. But this war situation is completely unmaintainable. So if oil blows out, you're going to watch something that is truly unthinkable happen to the monetary system around the world. And again, it comes back to the reset. But here at home, we would just be crushed. So think about yourself in the middle of winter. You have your car, but no petrol, and it gets down to 15 degrees Fahrenheit. Ransom hit it on the head there. I mean, these temperatures are not meant for some homes or cars to endure when it gets incredibly cold for extended periods of time. And I really believe that this winter, and Ransom, he knows Diamond over at the Oppenheimer Ranch Project as well. Me and Diamond have been calling grand solar minimum cool downs. And now the space agencies are reducing their solar cycle 25 forecast, ending this solar cycle 3 years early. That's insane. So the average, to put it into perspective, the average is an 11.2 year solar cycle. This one is going to be down around 8 years. And it's going to drop off a cliff, solar activity. So expect cooler temperatures, colder than normal winter. And I've been reading a lot of reports for those who think that we might be heading into a deeper, faster cooling that won't rebound as we head into this continuous step off into the ice age. Now, don't mince my words here that I'm saying we're going into an ice age. That's not it. The step down is progressively cooler that never recovers to warmer temperatures over time. So as this next step off, which is possible this winter beginning, takes us into a lower range of temperature, which becomes the new normal. And then successively, the next new normal is cooler than this present period and cooler than the next cooler period. And it continues to progress down in terms of steps of coolness until you reach the ice age. So there's a huge amount of scientists, peer-reviewed, those who study that are not allowed to be seen in media or social media that have been, taken away from the public arena of speech, that are talking about we are super poised for jumping down a step in cool. And once that happens, then everywhere you grow food will have to be rethought. So Ransom, I'll send it back to you because I know I tried to unload there a whole bunch in a couple minutes.
Right. No, the whole time I was thinking that. So I've already experienced extreme cold on purpose just to see how good my equipment worked. So I've gathered enough for my just about entire family to have some Gore-Tex. And then depending on what you wear under it, you can either find the nice fleece. I think it's fleece. It might be polyester or something like that. I'm not sure what it's made out of, but the military standard that goes under it to keep you warm. I went out in what they were calling Snowmageddon, like in, I think it was 2014 or whatever it was, when the nor'easter blew in there and covered the whole DC all the way up to Maine in like feet of snow. And I went outside playing in my Gore-Tex. I got hot. I was, actually the risk seemed to be getting too hot and sweating inside of your gear. But if you just chill out and you take your time and you have waterproof Gore-Tex boots and Gore-Tex pants and a Gore-Tex jacket and some kind of warm gloves, it's not as bad. I mean, it's not like we're living in the Stone Age. We do have technology. And if you plan and prep right, you can definitely hang out outside. Now, a lot of people don't know that, and they buy all this junk off of, in my opinion, it's junk. I don't want to get sued or nothing, but people that buy all this survival gear from like the companies that are more for fashion, like these skiing jackets, et cetera, and they're pretty warm, but you're paying high dollar in those cases too. What's cheaper than that is go to your local thrift store. If you live next to a military base, it doesn't matter if it's Army, Marine Corps, Navy, or Air Force. They all have Gore-Tex outfits. And for some reason, people that enlist don't really hold on to those things when they should. But these things are awesome. I have several pairs. I have Woodland, I have Air Force, I have Marine Corps, I have Army, and all of them make you waterproof, which that is your enemy. The water is what kills you. The sub-zero temperatures and stuff, you're not even going to have that inside of your little tent. It's like a personal tent. And now on top of that, of course, eventually you're going to have to get out of that and you will lose body heat over time. But, if you have some way of hiding your heat and warming up, it's even better. And just remember, all you have to do is actually heat something where you can warm your feet and your hands. You don't need to get, your whole body warmed up like people think. Just feet and hands. That's all your blood goes through there, and it'll warm your whole body within minutes. Matter of fact, when they pull people out of frozen rivers, the paramedics have a little device that they put their hand in there, and it warms the blood pretty rapidly. And matter of fact, that is something you could probably buy on Amazon right now, and for yourself. And you think about it, it would totally reverses hypothermic conditions. If you have food and you're warm, you're good. Everybody else is going to be tripping about what's going on. And, I hate to say this, but there's like a short list that you should get and then do all of these other bigger preps. Number one would be you need to be warm. You need to have water. I mean, warm, water, guns. Those are the first three. And then food you can stockpile. Like every time I go shopping, like I said last week when we were talking, you should get a little bit of prep then, even if it's, just a little bit. You start putting it into your stash pile. Now, keep in mind, like you said, there may come a time when the lights go out and things become very unstable and you don't have the opportunity to bunker down in your own house. And that is why I have a separate go bag for my car. I have a separate go bag for different scenarios, like if there's a forest fire or something. That's one bag. I want to be able to grab bags. So it's not, unreasonable for you to prep in a way that you go ahead and think about any scenario. So what if there's a forest fire? What if it's so cold that everything goes out? What are you going to do? I have piles of wood outside that, I'm sure other people are going to go after, but I don't actually need them because we all have Gore-Tex materials to keep us warm. And then in every go bag is a means to eat and a means to be warm and a means to manipulate my environment, i.e. Certain tools that are almost universal anywhere. Anybody can get a little bit set and a screwdriver or a ratchet and all of the metric and standard up to a size. I mean, if you're going to try to be working on machinery, you obviously need big tools. And it's not, a bad idea to buy a bunch of old used tools. Speaking of the thrift shops and pawn shops, it doesn't have to be new. It just has to be sturdy. And matter of fact, the older tools that seem to be, going around like that are actually the tougher, better tools to get. Excuse me. And, these places right now are some of the gold mines, in my opinion. So if you're actually a prepper and you want to start, cutting down on your list of things to get, start heading to the thrift stores and the pawn shops right now, because people are having hard economic times and they're selling everything that they can to pawn shops. To the point where pawn shops are telling them no about a bunch of stuff because they don't feel like they could turn it fast enough. But tools are not one of those items. Pawn shops will always buy tools because, like gold, it'll always be worth something. And I'm thinking, even if it's not super overall colder than normal winter, I was reading the Farmer's Almanac there, and they agree that this is going to be a winter with a lot of ice, snow, and sleet and things like that. And you know what that means? That means damaged infrastructure. So depending on where you live, and this is what's funny is I don't even know why it's kind of conspiratorial to talk about prepping and stuff. I mean, how many natural disasters have you seen hit the United States in the past decade? It's over and over again. Hurricane, blizzard, whatever it is. Even like you said, even a minor cold snap in Texas created complete chaos to a point. And imagine if the power just don't come back on for months and months and months and months. We're talking about a totally different world here. The deed on your property doesn't mean much. Your stashes of where you think you're going to back up to your backup bunker don't mean as much because there's going to be wandering people. So let's hope it don't get to that point. But if it's lesser survival, any scenario, like the entire world hasn't gone crazy yet, there is a catastrophe or an emergency that you have, it's really not that hard to prepare for that, especially severe cold, because like I said, we have technology now. I mean, there's so much cheap stuff online that can create a very nice little go bag where you have tools, warmth, water, etc. And that's what we need. And besides, all of these people that are camping outside, I keep meeting them and stuff, and they don't have these things. They don't have an ability to clean water. They don't have Gore-Tex warm clothing. They got some hand-me-down stuff or a winter jacket they thought was good. And then as soon as it gets wet, guess what? They're freezing and they're close to death because they get hypothermia outside. So if they don't have a real thing, and I hate to say it, there are, I'm going to say tens of thousands, because I don't know the exact number right now, but judging on the past couple of years, up to 20 million people have crossed the southern border. A lot of these people get caught off guard every year, and they find them out here in the desert dead because they don't have jackets and stuff. And one day it's 85 degrees and the next day it's 30 degrees. Welcome to the Southwest. It's the same thing that Native Americans have been dealing with for, probably tens of thousands of years for sure. And God knows who else who wandered into these conditions, and especially in Europe. And I've been reading so much about archaic man, and it seems like, anything from a severe cold blast to one volcano to somebody with the sniffles can turn civilization everywhere on its head instantaneously. So, we probably won't see what's coming. We don't know which volcano or which giant earthquake or which giant hurricane or which super cold blast is going to happen. But something's going to happen somewhere, and we know that because it keeps happening. I mean, just look at those earthquakes in Afghanistan just a while back. Total destruction. Why haven't they prepared for that over the last 10,000 years? It's got to make you wonder, which gets us into these lost civilizations. Whoever was building the megalithic stuff, they knew what was up. Where'd they go?
Please remember to visit our sponsor tonight, Heaven's Harvest, if you're interested in some storable foods. Speaking of the content of this evening's program, every purchase you make helps keeps us online here and bringing you information just like this. We'll talk about the most rationed things for both WorldArs, 1 and 2, as we come back from the break, and then see how it might align with things you might also want to prepare for.
And we'll be right back after this message.
Releasing the show notes from our programs, just bullet point list of what we talked about so you can start the conversation with others or do a deep dive in your own research. Head over to oilseedcrops.org. In the nav bar, you'll see MIAC radio show. Click there, put your email, and we'll get that out to you on a weekly. And please remember, with YouTube's algorithm running today, like, subscribe, and click that bell to get notified
Cloned food, edited food, fake food, and unhealthy foods of all kinds. That's not what Mama was cooking when you were a little bambino. You want to know what's in your food. I know you do. Heaven's Harvest has Protein Booster Kit is the bolster of your daily emergency meal plan. Containing only essential proteins, beef, chicken, and eggs, stock up on vital amino acids and nutrients required to thrive in all situations. They got the fruits and vegetable buckets, the breakfast bucket kits, and for a You Health Food Nuts, they got an organics kit. Now that's knowing what's in your food. They even got the heirloom seed kit so you can plant your own food. Heaven's Harvest Heirloom Vegetable Seed Kit is a simple way to start storing seeds safely. Not sure what varieties are hardy, easy growers, which thrive and taste the best. They have taken the guesswork and time out of the process of seed saving. Now you know what's in your food because you grew it. Go to heavensharvest.com. You can save 15% at the checkout with code ADAPT.
In the ancient world, gold was magical. Gold was a manifestation of the sacred, and objects fashioned from it were a means of connecting with a supernatural world. Far from passive deposits of wealth, gold was sacred. It was greatly prized in cult. Objects made of gold were active agents in an ongoing engagement with powerful forces. The Inca used gold to make ritual objects, combinations of gold and silver and gold and copper called tumbaga. Wearing gold jewelry was a sign of a person's wealth and power. For the Inca, gold was also the blood of Viracocha, their sun god. For the Mayan people and many others in ancient America, gold was part of a complex symbolic system. Gold is mentioned in Greek mythology for examples as varied as King Midas, the golden fleece stolen by Jason who possessed the power of resurrection, through to the golden apples of Hesperides. The golden apples were guarded by the 100-headed dragon Ladon. The dragon conferred immortality on whoever ate them. Over the past 5,000 years, from the Egyptian pharaohs and the merchants of 14th century Venice to world governments in the space age, man has treasured gold for its utility and value during times of both prosperity and disparity. Through the rise and fall of great dynasties and civilizations, gold has maintained its purchasing power as a reliable store of value for millennia. Gold has been used as money since 560 BC, when King Croesus of Lydia created a gold coin in his own image. Ever since, it has continued to increase its long-term value and remains the world's most universally accepted form of money. Today, the demand for gold continues to flourish globally. History proves that fiat paper money is designed to go to zero through inflation, whereas gold has intrinsic value in which it maintains forever. Paper money is a debt instrument. Gold is an asset of wealth in its own right. It does not depend upon any governments, corporations, or individuals' promise to repay. ITM Trading has spent the last 27 plus years developing a team of expert researchers and analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn or currency collapse. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422. Or go to learn.itmtrading.com/MIAC and keep watching Mountain High Time and Mini Ice Age Conversations if you know what's good for.
And it is a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. I like that song because it's a long way to the top, whatever you want to do. You're going to have the drive and the commitment. And you know, I've been stuck at 180,000 subscribers up on the Adapt 2030 channel for 6+ months. And there seems to be an algorithm that hits my videos and then it stops. Because I tell you, I was looking at the last 30 days of videos, and I had 4 of them that were like 15,050 to 15,150. Like, you're telling me that 4 videos were within 100 views of each other. That's impossible. So I'm beginning to put a lot more non-YouTube content up on the Patreon channel. So please join me over there, Adapt 2030 on Patreon, and Subscribestar as well. Now, before we got on the break, we were talking about, where is this truly going to go, and what types of things will you need to get prepared as we move through. So, Ransom, if you don't mind, I just wanted to do a radio check, and then also wanted to jump into the most rationed commodities of World War I and World War II across the United States and England. That might be a 3.0 if we get into something a little bit bigger. So I just want to make sure I'm live with you still here and we didn't get cut off. Can you give me a 5x5 if we're okay on the radio?
10-4, big buddy. No, I'm still. I can hear you pretty good. I can hear you
nice.
good.
Okay. Yeah, that song. It's a long way to. You got to watch that AC/DC. It was way back when Bon Scott was with them, and they were on the back of this open, I don't know, it was just like a trailer, and they were rocking on the street. That's old school stuff, man. That's a cool tune. But it gives you motivation to, keep going with whatever happens, because when you stop, you stop. You get that, right? When you stop, you stop. Like, once you stop in motion, then you chose, and you have to stop, and you're going to have to pivot because you stopped. Now, you're either going to have to go right or left because you're not going straight anymore. It's the same thing with getting ready for these events. If you just get so flabbergasted and just so depressed and so stressed that I can't take it anymore, and you just stop, well, then they won. The dark powers won because they've manipulated your mind enough where you gave up hope or motivation that you just crawled up in the corner and stopped. You can not do that. It's going to take all of us together moving forward as like a unified force of humanity with our minds for something more positive to move through and break through this darkness that we're in at the moment. And I'm super excited, like I say in the beginning of the show, to see that these wind power projects are being shelved and the electric vehicles are not being bought. This is a positive thing. Although the Agenda 2030 goals take us into no electricity, extreme, barely livable food rations, which is why I wanted to talk about rationing here. So if anybody out there has a pen and paper, please take notes on this. I've done 2 videos so far, and I've talked with a couple people about this. I've had an interview about it as well. So United States, World War II, even though it was a behemoth of manufacturing, and we were very, very more self-sufficient than we were now. Now, World War I, it was literally a different world back then. They didn't even barely have roads. If they did, they were dirt paths. They were more like wide oxen carts, even in America. I listen to a lot of old timers talk about how they moved from point A to point B in, say, the 1915 or something. Cars were brand new. People were still riding horses. Our roads, they were mainly dirt. Although some were better compacted dirt and some had, gravel that was compacted on it, and they rolled, some kind of earth mover over it. At that point, it was just 2 barrels with water and a machine to drive the 2 barrels and move it back and forth and, push the rock into the earth. That was the complexity of our roads in World War I. Now, World War II, we still didn't even have the highway system up yet. That didn't occur until like the 1950s, until we really built what you consider the interstate system. So even in World War II, we didn't have the highways as you understand them today. There was no double lane, moving in both directions. No. It was still 1-lane roads, although far better. They were paved. We manufactured most of the things we needed in the United States for what we consumed. There was huge aluminum smelting, massive steel foundries. We had massive mining. We did all our own glass. We did everything ourselves. We even ran rubber. Then the war breaks out. And we had this surprise attack in Pearl Harbor that everybody knew about, but let happen so they could draw the war machine and get the American people on the side of joining the war. I encourage everybody to look at that. In Pearl Harbor, they knew that attack was coming and they let it go on. And it was magically all of the oldest rust bucket ships that they were going to, retire anyway, were the ones that were all sunk in Pearl Harbor. Everything else was out in the open ocean. Can you believe it? What luck. We'll do some research on that. So I'm going to take you through January 1942 all the way until December of 1945. Now, the very first things that were rationed, and this is also in World War I and World War II, but there's much better documentation about the Second World War. Tires, because rubber comes from outside the United States. Although we have mountains of tires that we could recycle, the energy required and the machinery required to recycle tires, which I've been to a few processing plants in my day, because I was looking at sourcing some machinery for recycling tires where it ripped apart the tire. I couldn't believe how it was able to take out the steel belts inside the tire and separate them off one chute. It was able to rip the rubber away from synthetic padding between layers within it, those strands, if for a better term, and rip that all apart until you were literally left with 100% rubber, a bunch of synthetic strands that ran alongside the steel belts, and that one larger piece of steel that's within, right where it attaches to the rim. You got a larger gauge piece of steel in there. And it's separated into all these four different categories of things. But it was burning a huge amount of power to do it. So you drop the tire in it, and it was slow because it took a lot of ripping, grinding, and cross-cutting. And nothing came out in big pieces, let's say that. It was all shredded, super small to separate. We could do that for the tire supply, but generally most of the tires, that's why not many of them are recycled. It's really difficult to rip a tire apart back into its base pieces again. Even if you're just going to set it simple, like separate the steel belts from the rubber, that is a very complex process. So generally, you're going to want to get new rubber, but where's the rubber produced? Myanmar, Thailand, China, these kind of places, Indonesia, but they're all bricks aligned. So we can guarantee almost to a point that rubber supplies would be greatly, greatly affected here in the United States, just as it was all the last two world wars. And that was the very first thing rationed in America. And that's why I wanted to start with that one. So it started from January 1942, instant rationing, all the way until 45, until the war ended. Cars were the second thing rationed because they used so much steel and they used tires. So you actually had to get a permit to buy a car. And the only way you could do that is to prove that you were part of the valuable war effort, that you were so essential. See, that BS rolls around again. You had to prove you were the most essential for the war effort to get some sort of pass to be able to buy a car. At the same time, just a few months after July 1942, bicycles were rationed because you needed steel, aluminum, and rubber tires to have a bicycle. So as Ransom and I talk about, if you can get some of these things right now while they're super cheap, get a nice mountain bike that can go over multi-terrain, because walking a mile and a half to go do a task to buy something, fill water, and then come back a mile and a half, that's 3 miles round trip. Are you going to walk that? Or how simple would it be to use a bicycle, and you could carry heavier stuff on a bicycle if your tires were inflated correctly? So bicycles are going to be hard to come by, especially in rationing. A lot of people are going to start riding a bike. Now you can go off and go, well, there's going to be a sniper over there and they're going to take your bike. Once stability comes back to areas and there's trading that's reestablished, it's not going to be as dangerous as you think. It'll revert sort of to normal. Just less gasoline, less availability, but bicycles will be the way to travel for many in very short distances. And then gasoline was also on the list of things that were rationed. Gasoline, fuel oils, and kerosene. So those of you that live in the United States in the Northeast predominantly still are heating oil. And if you're heating oil, you're going to want to try to fill up extra. Now, kerosene, we don't use too much anymore. That's kerosene lanterns. Yeah, I have a few of those too. But predominantly, we're not using that kind of thing. Solid fuels was another rationed one, but that's considered coal and wood. Now, I don't know how many people are right now heating their homes with wood or coal. That seems to be a thing that's a blast from the past, so maybe that won't count. The next one down, December 1942, before the year was out, they rationed stoves, any kind of metal stove. So you can see today, like I have a winter well stove that goes inside our yurt. So in emergency, if our house turns off and it's off for a week, we can go live in a yurt and have like amazing heat in that thing with this winter well stove. But that's going to be a rationed item because potbelly stoves, cast iron stoves, those are going to be for the war effort. The steel and the aluminum, the zinc, molybdenum, and any other tin, whatever, your tin cans are going to disappear off the shelves. And they're going to dehydrate it and probably put it in a box because that's what they did in the World War II. They dehydrated everything and put it in boxes. And you had to go home and rehydrate it with milk or water. And there was no more cans of anything. There was no more tin or steel cans. All that was for the war effort. So the packaging changed during the time too. Now, rubber footwear, or what we consider shoes today, galoshes, that was rationed before the war, before 1942 was out. Also, shoes. Every American got to get 2 new pairs of shoes each year during the war. So from October 1942 to 1945, each American got 2 pairs of shoes per year. And again, that was on a ration like booklet where you had to go in and nobody could sell it unless you had the thing. All right, so those are the ones that are non-edibles. Now think about how that overlaps into your life today. And then I'll do the quick list here of edibles because I think that's important. Sugar was the first thing rationed in terms of edibles. It was right after tires. Sugar and coffee, those two, because obviously they came from far away. We don't grow sugar in America too much. Now, there are some areas, but you know, it's mainly coming from Brazil, Southeast Asia. But if the lines are cut and Brazil's aligned with the BRICS nations, I think we're going to get a lot of stuff cut off myself. Or it's going to cost us an incredibly high price. Now, processed foods back then, you got to think, what's a processed food, in like 1942? Something freeze-dried. Going to be very different than today's crackers and potato chips. The next thing that started to get rationed more and more, and this is in March of 1943, was canned meats and canned fish and fresh meats also. And along that list was cheese, canned milk, and fats, which would included lard, butter. So, you know, that's where it takes us, Ransom. So I don't know, you know, how do you get ready for some of these changes if we follow history? Now, these were the very same items rationed across Europe and the United States in World War I, and the same exact items rationed in World War II. So how does that leave us if we go into a Middle East conflict and the oil gets cut off? Like, where does that leave us in terms of rationing? And of those items I've listed, how many of them are cheaper now? Because people, like you said, are selling a lot of stuff because they need money because the economy's down.
Yeah, well, I could see, you know, them rationing tires being kind of messed up for a lot of people because they don't go out and buy tires ahead of time for their tires to pop. But you know, we can get around it, and I'm sure you live out in the country. You've seen plenty of people driving down the road with almost bald tires or patch tires, or that's got a plug in the tire, making it work to the last little bit there. But think about some of these other things. You know, if it's getting so bad that we're having to do this, like, you know, it happened in World War II, it's very, you know, obvious that you're going to be wanting the meat, the dairy, the coffee, the dry fruits, jams, jellies, lard, all of that stuff. I was just showing a list of that too. Like, and not only that, you really want to just have backup. I mean, and this always gets me every time because we get into this topic. This is just something that a lot of people were doing anyway. It had nothing to do with the war, right? That's just how they live. They canned and jarred everything that they had. Nobody does that now. So if you're only just doing a little bit of it, like you got tins of beans or rice or any of that stuff, and you got it dry and protected, you're ahead of the game by big time. And if you're somebody that buys things in pairs, like I do, I'm not a rich guy by no means, but when I need something and I know that it's very important, I try to buy not just one, but 2 or 3 of them at a time. Just because, one's going to break. And if it's a really good product, you can possibly make, 1 out of 2 broken ones if it comes down to it. But I think what people really should be thinking about, if you're going to take it serious, is start getting things that you don't really need, that you don't usually buy, like, I don't know, a big bottle of, isopropyl alcohol, a big bottle of what's the hydrogen peroxide, several big jars of petroleum jelly. All of this stuff can be used for not only, certain things, but it can be used for medical stuff. Petroleum jelly especially. This is a great thing that you're going to be wanting to treat your wounds for. And I have a little story about this. When I was a butcher, once in a while we'd get a bunch of frozen sausage rolls, and there would be a big sell on that. And I would have to sit there when the people came, and they would say, "Hey, could you cut me up one of those frozen sausages, because they cut better when they're frozen?" And I would say, "Sure." You get in there and you get a bunch of slices. It basically makes patties for them if you cut it about a ½ inch. But anyway, I cut the end of my finger off, like right above the knuckle, just right off. And the lady was real mad about me taking forever with her order, and she ended up running off, evidently, with the end of my finger. Now, that's just a side note in the story. But anyway, I don't know what happened to the end of my finger, and it's like right behind where the fingernail starts to grow. So I go to the hospital. I'm squirting out blood out of the end of my finger. It's real gnarly. It's painful. It cut it clean, just surgically right off. And since we couldn't find the tip of my finger, they were not going to put it back on. So I had 3 different doctors that gave me 3 different courses of action. One of them was to pull some skin over and staple it shut. Another one told me they could just, really cauterize it and wrap it. Another one was saying they could take a patch of skin out of somewhere else on my body and put it on the end of it. And, I really just didn't like any of these ideas. And I was near passing out from the chemical that they used to cauterize it and make it stop bleeding. And then some old guy that was not an old guy, he was another doctor, but he wasn't one of the ones that was interacting with me. He told me that he just read a new paper about how if you could keep your flesh wet, moist and clean, that it would probably grow back. So I listened to him because that, it just made sense to me. So I just went ahead and did it. And I wrapped my finger probably for 9 months straight in saran wrap with petroleum jelly. And I'd have to clean it every day with some, bubbly soap like Dawn or something. I cleaned it every day. It was very painful, but I cleaned it every day and would rewrap it so it wouldn't stink or get infected or none of that, and put petroleum jelly. And my finger is all the way back. It grew all the way back except for a little spot at the end where I got lazy and stopped doing it at the end. But there are ways to do stuff that are outside of what they tell you can do. So never take, the advice of people like medical professionals as the only course of action. I'm not giving medical advice that worked for me, but just the idea of just simple things like saran wrap and petroleum jelly was how I grew the end of my finger back. Now think about if you're alone, this is something that you don't need technology for. All you have to do is keep it clean, which means you need clean water and some kind of soap. So when you're going to the store and you're just buying, you decide you're going to go spend some disposable income, which everybody does. I'm sure a bunch of people spend a lot for Halloween. Instead of buying like 30 bags of candies, which is still, cool and everything, maybe throw some bags of beans in there, some bulk rice, some different kinds of lentils and different things like that. Not to eat like you want to go home and eat it right now, but just to start filling holes in your house. And lard and all of those things are great. But you got to think about other things like day-to-day needs, like that you get used to and you take for granted, like cleaning yourself and hygiene. You're going to need some good sprays and soaps that are antimicrobial, antifungal, and antiviral, all of it, the whole thing. You want the whole thing because, believe it or not, without running water and electricity and soap, we start to get sickly, stinky, dirty, and diseases pop up that we're not used to dealing with because we've been living in a more evolved, society as far as it goes for hygiene and products that are readily available. So if those turn off, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to need some good supplies to last for a while in case anyone gets hurt or has these things. And when you take care of them immediately and you keep yourself clean, things don't get out of control and you don't get bad and serious infections, which brings us to the next point, which is a little bit not as easy to get like these other things, which is some form of antibiotics that you could store back. And I know it's kind of touchy about talking about stuff like that, but there's plenty of articles that show the best medications over time historically that still work. And if you stockpile some of those, or even better, figure out how to make it from scratch.
Yeah, let me touch on the point of what you just said there. The antibiotics. When you look at those, there's a expiration date on antibiotics. But the Army, and maybe you could find this one, the Army did a full inventory on 30,000 different medicines that they had. And they wanted to really see how long can you go past the expiration date and how would the medicine still work as you went past until it became literally 0% effective. That's the premise of the entire PDF. They go through all 30,000 medicines, and they, even from bandages to, anything that you have in a powdered form, like azithromycin or whatever it would be for like bacterial skin infections. And by the way, if you go to an aquarium shop, you can get azithromycin and erythromycin, both for either fin rot or something like this. And it's a topical, and they come in these little tiny packs. And if you go to an aquarium shop, you can get that over the counter because it's for your fish, not for human consumption. But the bevy of everything from the penicillins to the amoxicillins to whatever it is, the doxycyclines, they did a huge amount of study on this. And they were showing a lot of these things were good 3 years, 5 years, sometimes 7 years past what the expiration date were on the bottle. Now, one thing that's unanimous, if it needed to be refrigerated, the expiration date was very close to the expiry on a refrigerated product. So like any of those kind of insulins and things that need to be kept in a fridge, you're SOL. But other things that extended out, like, they might say, oh, the expiration date's this, but they found that doxycycline, again, not medical advice, I'm just repeating or what I saw in the Army Journal of Medicine when they reviewed all 30,000 medicines, that it was good for 3 years, past the expiration dates. Now, it's in a tabular form where it's in a spreadsheet, and they list each kind of medicine, and then, they're talking about battlefield plans. And what if, you're out in the middle of, how many wars have America fought? I think we've been in war for, let me see, if our country was founded in 1776, I think we've been in war for 250 years out of that entire period straight. So we're probably going to need for medicines across the way here, because I was reading an article. There's only 8 years that America has not been in war over the founding of the nation. That's insane. That's sad, is what it is. But there's always you're going to get cut off. You're going to not have enough supplies. I mean, it doesn't matter. These chapters of history, there's always some sections that get cut off that never can get resupplied until the very last minute, and they burn through everything. Keep that in mind, that if you have a chance, there's many ways to go to the farm co-op, not medical advice, but they have blue coat sprays, which is antibiotic sprays for animals that get cut. There's a lot of things out there, and I'm not going to really go much further than that. You can get at farm co-op stores. You'll have to see how friendly they are in your store and how much animal knowledge you have to try to talk to see if they'll give you what you need in there. And if your face is familiar enough and friendly enough over the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and they know you, then they pretty much just get anything you need. But if it's first time rocking in and you're like, I need this, I need this, I need this, they're probably going to be like, who are you? But if you've been there for a while, so another thing in terms of prepping, you got to start knowing the people where you're going to get your supplies. Like a farm co-op store.
It says what?
A farm co-op. And you can go in there and get 50-pound bags of grains or seed grains. Like you can go in and get a 50-pound bag of barley for like $16. But imagine grinding that down to make bread. Like you can't go into a supermarket and get anything remotely close to that pricing. And wheat, like wheat berries, hard red winter wheat or different kind of wheat, white wheat, whatever you want to plant out in the field, you can get 50-pound bags of that at just, again, $15, $16 for a 50-pound bag of wheat berries. Like that's impossible to get in any other pricing. But you can get that even not having a farm. And as long as you know how to ask for it, they'll give it to you. So understand your seed supply, like buckwheat. 50-pound bag of buckwheat, come on, man, you're not going to find that anywhere. Spelt, millet, like the silver millet, like all that stuff's edible human grade. It's just used as seed. It's open pollinator seed. So like this Japanese silver millet, 50-pound bag, $20 for millet. Oh, that's crazy. You go into a store, you're paying like $3 for a pound of millet. There's a lot of things to be able to get through, but I will suggest please start to know the vendors around your area of those things that will keep you alive in bulk. I don't know. I'm going to leave it there.
I don't trust you. I have to read it from my own authoritative sources, David. I'm going to go to the National Library of Medicine, the NIH, because we all know that all of those guys over there are 100% right on the money, man. Anyway, they have a paper here.
Trust your doctor.
I was laughing when you said that, like if you go into the co-op and they get to know who you are, and of course, they're going to like you better than if you're a stranger that comes in there asking for a bunch of stuff. Fed says what? That's what I was saying. Fed says what? Anyway, according to the NIH, the expiration date on medicines is basically useless. It says right here, there is so much wastage of drugs as they are not used in time. Medications are expensive. And in Asia and Africa continents, where many have the problem of affordability, and the debate is to see whether or not the medication could be used even after the expiry date without losing the efficacy. Most drug expiration dates information is from the study conducted by the Food and Drug Administration at the request of the military. That ties into what you were talking about. I couldn't find the paper, but that's the tie-in. With a large and expensive stockpile of drugs, the military faced tossing out and replacing its drugs every few years. What they found from the study is 90% of more than 100 drugs, both prescription and over-the-counter, were perfectly good to use even after 15 years after the expiration date. Hence, the expiration date doesn't really indicate a point at which the medication is no longer effective or has become unsafe. And most of that's true for almost everything, including a lot of the canned foods and stuff. I had the misfortune of my grandmother passing away, but we used all of the canned goods that were in there that she was already prepping for whatever reason herself, because she grew up in the Depression, so she never stopped prepping. And not to get too personal, but my dad wasn't the greatest at taking care of us. So we always had that backbone of our grandmother who lived through the Depression and always looked ahead, penny pinched, invested. She always made sure that there was some kind of future plan going on for everyone. And, part of that was she just stockpiled food in her home. I mean, even when she didn't eat it, she barely ate anything when, in the last, I'm going to say 25 years of her life until she hit about 90. She really didn't eat much, but her house was packed full of food. Some of it was expired already for more than 10 years or 15 years. And some of it I opened up and it was good. I mean, there was nothing wrong with it at all other than being the GMO gunk that they put in the cans. I couldn't convince her about that. But, she did the old ways. Everything was saved. She even saved all her plastic bags, paper bags, etc. She would make sure that they had just a little bit of pesticide on the paper thing. So, the mothballs and whatever. So stuff wouldn't eat it. The whole way of living right before the technological revolution is a better, in my opinion, way of living. And we should have never given up that way of living. We should have just added to it with more efficiency, more know-how, and more technology. But instead, we just let that world go. Not all of us, of course. Most of the people living nowadays are dependent on that system, but most of our viewers and listeners are the type of people that think ahead. That's why they're listening to us talking about all these different scenarios, whether woo-woo or not. I go back to that any scenario, and my grandparents definitely were the kind of people that believed in that idea. From the whole bit, from protecting yourself to feeding yourself to fixing, taking care of, replacing everything on your own just in case. My grandpa was an engineer that worked for the Air Force, and you go into his shop and he had triplets of every single tool, and it's seemingly every tool for every task. And there wasn't anything that he didn't fix himself or alter. Like even the products he would go out and buy, he would be like, yeah, it's all right, but I want it to do this. And he would just engineer a solution to that. And that's the way we have to go back to. I have a feeling, just go back a few generations and pick up all of the benefits and good things they were doing and leave behind, some of the more negative things that people are whining about in today's age. You can take the good without taking the bad. It is possible to, dump the bathwater without dumping the baby out. You can successfully take the good out and dump the bad of ideas. That's where we need to go, man. And I'm trying to do that right now. And I've tried it for 4 years. And I've learned a lot with no one's help. As far as the failures and stuff I've did without getting help. And I found, guess what? It's a lot easier to just do a little bit of research, ask someone else that did it already. You kind of skip to the end in the knowledge, but you're still going to mess up. So this year we got quite a bit of food, but I wouldn't say it would be enough to support a family through the winter. We need more land and more prep, but that's what everybody should be doing. Or I don't think we're going to make it as a nation, because I think the governmental structure has already sold us out, and the plan is a controlled demolition, like, so famously said about other epics.
Yeah, I wonder how long that'll take to go from start point to finish point, because people are not going to sit by quietly. There's going to be a lot of communities that take security into their own hands. And if you're not from there, or you can't prove you're from there, either with a driver's license or something, because that's a good thing about getting out in the community, whether you go to the coffee shop, or maybe you go down to the deli where people are hanging at, or you go to the co-op, or you get yourself known a little bit, where your face are like, oh, I've seen that guy before. Yeah. I've seen that girl before. Yeah. Like that'll be enough for you to be around, especially, the Amish guys. They talk to us and think, oh yeah, I know them. And they live down by the pond over there. They let us kids go fishing in the pond. That's those people. They're nice. So getting known around is going to be another handy way for you to be welcome in the community, because once they see you and recognize you in that kind of situation where security is going to be done by those in the community, they might not know you personally and, have visited your house, but living in the countryside, there's a lot of problems out here. And if you're not in the newspaper being arrested for this, that, or the other, or, you go into a store and nobody's talking junk about you because you haven't done anything bad. Like, it's small towns talk. People talk, man. It is a small place. Everybody knows who's doing what. So if you're able to zip in and out of like the hardware stores and the local lumber mills, and, you got 10 guys in there and you rock in and maybe one knows you, but 10 don't even know This guy's never seen him. He's not in the paper. He's not a criminal. I never heard about it. He's not causing trouble, because the troublemakers are known by face. And plus they got like a weird aura about the drug use and thing. They just like skittish and everything. So just being known around the community as, okay, well, they keep to themselves. They're not in trouble with the law. That's good enough for security when it comes down to some of these things that might occur. Because they're going to take communities to come together. And you might not trust somebody 100%, but if you trust them enough to be like, all right, this dude seems solid, not drug user, it seems pretty, sewn up together here, then, yeah. It's going to be a community effort. And I will say one thing, since I was talking about the rationing with sugar, and I do distilling myself, my friend's got a license, he's got a distillery, and, he always teaching me the tricks. One thing that could be greatly affected is alcohol. If there's not enough sugar, there's definitely not going to be enough alcohol unless they're getting it from sugar beets, or you're doing something in your own. Sugar beets would be great, but you got to figure out what the percentage of sugar is compared to sugarcane sugar. Honey's not really a substitute if you're going to be doing distilling, because honey's really expensive. And I'm not talking about buying it to drink it. I'm talking about using it to do tinctures and things that you can preserve medicines with. And at the same time, like Ransom talked about, have a way to clean yourself. So when I do a run with my friend, we measured out very cleanly 50 milliliters of methanol needs to be removed out of every 1 gallon that you're going to distill. And generally, you're going to run a batch at the same time. So I'll do some simple math. If you're going to do a 5-gallon still, you're going to have to remove the very first thing that comes off the drip, drip, drip. You're going to have to remove that first 250 milliliters. And usually we go over, we're like around 325, because you really don't want that. But that is incredible cleaning solution. The thing about it is you don't really want to rub it on your hands because it's methanol. But it's a great cleaner. I mean, that stuff is amazing for cleaning. And if you talk about, what if you don't have any kind of spray, bacterial sprays, antibacterials? Ransom talking about the soaps, the antifungal soaps, the antimicrobials, the antibacterials. Well, if you don't have anything to be able to spray down let's say your cutting boards with, or your countertops, that's a really good way to get sick. But if you have the 4 shots coming off there, you can mix that with water, and even it's going to be super, super high proof, around 180. So you could probably even cut it 50% and still have enough alcohol in there to kill the bacteria. You don't really want to rub it on your skin. But then, you come into some other stuff that can be used for tinctures all the way through. And yeah, there's going to be that little heart section that's good for tradables, that has been since antiquity. But either side of that, you're going to get a lot of wastage on it. And a lot of people save the tails, like I do, and he does too, a friend of mine, and rolls them back in. But their distillery, they're talking like, they're running 1,000 gallons at a time on their distillery. So when they get tails, they got like hundreds and hundreds of gallons of the tails. So they save all that to roll it back into the next batch. But the thing is, when they start on 1,000 gallons and you're going 50 milliliters, okay, they're talking like 50 gallons of wastage that's methanol that's taken off of that. So what do you do with 50 gallons of something? But they have a proper distillery, and they, but the math is the same. Alcohol is going to be something more and more difficult to find and come by during a rationing time. So prepare accordingly for your drinking needs, if you are or do, but also for your tincture needs. Because like right now, there's a huge amount of abundance. I talked about the toothache plant. Well, we're going to have to continue to dry that in the dehydrator and then put it into alcohol to save the benefits, the medicinal benefits of the toothache plant. So I'm probably going to need half of a fifth, or maybe a full fifth of that, of vodka at 100 proof plus, to be able to save that, because I got 100, almost, I'm going to say at least 150 little nodule heads that came off that very tight button heads coming off of the plant. So I'm going to save that. But that's a lot of material. And it's probably going to be wastage too. Even 100, that full double handful squeezed into just a fifth of vodka at 100 proof, it's going to be incredibly strong. And I could probably get 2, 3, 4/5 out of that. So what kind of medicines do you want to save, and what kind of tinctures are your priority? Like a general health tonic, I've done a ton of those, like goji berries and Chinese apple is a good one in vodka, and let it sit for a month, 2 months. Some of this stuff's like a year old that I have already. Even better, the longer it sits in the alcohol. Or, like a huge amount of collectibles that we've gotten across my, land here. And my friend Ryan, who's way more adept at identifying medicinal plants, shout out Appalachian Homestead, Appalachian Observatory. But he knows a lot more about plants than I do. But we've tinctured up a little bit of that from the reishi mushroom and some other things. So, Ransom, I'll leave it there, but there's a lot of things to think about preparing for. And I would like to get your opinion, thinking about it. How long do you think it is from start to finish of this thing happening, flaring off in the Middle East where the oil gets disrupted, and then we come back to some sort of normalized lifestyle after this war cycle runs its course? Things are happening faster now, perhaps, than World War II. So do you think it'll be a 4-year event, a 5-year event, or a 1-year event? We're in and out, or what do you think on the timelines?
I think, judging by history, it'd probably be a 5-year event once they really get it going. When you look back at these little invasions, the participation only lasts a couple years. But like in World War II, from start to finish, there was a lot of workings going on before the actual action happened there in the last several years of massive destruction and stuff. So, who knows? It's like the golden goose, really. It's the golden egg they have. It's endless wars, endless fear, endless rebuilding contracts of switching sides. That's why they always fund both sides. My son was asking me, what would happen if the U.S. actually split up into two parties? What would like not two parties like politically, but literally two armies, two factions, kind of like we did in the Civil War. And I was sitting there and I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, the continuity of government would probably do what they always do. They would back off, let it burn, and the banks and everybody would arm and fund both sides of it until there was no one left to fight. And then they just come out and take control of everything and start screaming phrases like never again, and we'll never do that again, and remember this and remember that, never forget this. And they always do that, but it seems like obviously they forgot that we didn't forget. So like they're pulling so many triggers in a row that the public has become numb to the shenanigans that goes behind it. Like we know there was a 7-hour delay order going on in Israel. We know about the Japanese thing, the Gulf of Tonkin, all the strange things in 9/11. We know about babies in incubators. We know about yellow cake uranium. We know about Operation Northwoods. We know about Operation Gladio, and we know about Agenda 2030, and we know about all the stuff that they continually push in our face through the Economic Forum. So they are pretty avid about telling us what they're going to do. And if you look at what everybody's clamoring for, it's just complete destruction. It's like the entire world has cabin fever. They realize that, we're never getting off this rock because this is the place that was made for us, and this is where we're supposed to be. And it drives some people nuts. And I think the people in power, because they're the next generation of power-hungry, warmongering, rain pullers of the world. They want to see what happened in World War II. Their grandpappy and their daddy got to see things blow up. Why not them? So I think they'll, go ahead and pull a couple of those just to scare the world. It's just another trigger. And we already know, I mean, we discussed this many times. There have been thousands of nuclear explosions underground, above ground, in the atmosphere. And, you know, those are just the ones that we know about. They just did one a couple weeks ago, again, in the Nevada desert. So, you know, they're not scared to do that. They don't care what happens. They have it all figured out according to them. But I think they're wrong in one aspect, and they have misestimated the resilience of the human being. And I'm talking about the human being on all four corners of the earth. Everywhere I've ever seen human beings, I see things that just blow me away. Things that they come up with, the ingenuity that people have in different parts of the world when they come across a problem of poverty or lack of resources, the ingenuity that I see. Like one example, think about in Southeast Asia, all over, they have these little lights that they've created, and you know, you've probably seen it on a TikTok video or whatever, or YouTube. They take 2-liter bottles, 1-liter bottles, 20-ounce bottles, and they just poke little holes in the roof. And there they got natural light all day long, daylights. And I've seen it put to the next level where they put a couple batteries and a little solar panel. And now guess what? Their little shack has nighttime lights too. And it really shows you that we don't need this super powerful industrial complex to do the simple tasks and needs of a human family in this day and age. We have the technology that you could be self-sufficient. The problem is that we're on a metered system, and anytime it seems like people try to opt out of that, that's when they get attacked. So knowing that, we have to stay on the metered system, but simultaneously plan to break apart or live, against or out of the matrix there of the grid. We have to do both. You can't just go off grid. And I hate to say it, these roaming bands of homeless people, I've seen them. They are not healthy. And you know, there's a real problem going on worldwide about people with nothing to do and no direction. And that's why they jump on these tribal causes so easily, because what else are they doing with their life besides staring at a cell phone all day? I was wondering, we're at that point, and we all kind of know that. So we're going into the winter season. I was thinking about what should everybody listening be doing right now besides, buying bulk of extra supplies and different things just in case. But the winter growing season is upon us, so we're not totally out. Different places can be growing different stuff. I was showing an article here. With the different grow zones. So you got 3 to 10. You can be growing herbs right now, planting them, indoor flowers for 3 to 10. Vegetables from zones 8 to 10. You could be planting vegetables out there. All kinds of stuff will be growing right now for the last end of it. That is, if we don't get bombarded with, the next 80,000 years of the glacial period we're probably going to be going into now that we're leaving the interglacial. Isn't it funny how all these climate scientists and everybody, they don't have anything to say if you just show them a simple graph of the last several ice ages and the fact that we have already hit the high point of the heat and we're going downhill for the next 80,000 years or so. So I would suggest that you buy jackets for yourself, your children, and even your grandchildren. It's going to get cold in places.
Yeah, and learn how to hunt mastodons. I mean, that's what I do in my free time. The chilliness coming inbound. To answer your question, microgreens. I think everybody should learn how to grow microgreens because indoors, as long as you can keep your house around 67 degrees to say 70 plus, however warm you want it, your microgreens are going to kick off. And also, if you don't have the ability to do that, buy a reptile heating pad that you get, for lizards in the wintertime, and then put that under your microgreen tray, and for sure they'll come off. And, experiment with a bunch of different types of seeds. I mean, experiment first with things you can buy in the supermarket, like black-eyed peas. They have some really supple green stems that just snap like peas do. And flax. I haven't really had any luck with black beans or red beans out of the supermarket. Chickpeas, for sure. But there's an enormous amount of things you could either sprout or go for the microgreens on. Of things that you could easily find in a supermarket where you might consider a bag of beans turns into a tray of lush greens for you, especially the peas, if you can find them. And again, it's going to be experimenting. Okay, maybe some of them don't sprout because they've been irradiated, but there's an enormous amount that do. I found a huge, I would say 85, maybe 90% of all the beans that I bought in those like flimsy, see-through clear plastic bags, nearly all of those sprout or you can grow them up. And it doesn't take much, like one bag of, potting soil. And it's probably going to be at a discount now because they, Home Depot and all these places, they want to sell it. I bet you can get a bag of potting soil for $3 to $5. And, once you have that, then you're set. All you need to do, you can actually grow microgreens even in a a cardboard box. And if you want to, bring it up a bit, go to a gardening center store where they might have some trays with mesh on them. And there you go. And a lot of that stuff's all on sale right now, too, because coming into winter, they realize nobody's going to garden from this point. So almost everything is on sale right now, pots. And you could do microgreens in regular flower pots, and your shape will be round versus putting them in a square tray. But I would say, once you get and you understand a few of these, my favorite one, the easiest one, no-brainer, like seriously, black-eyed peas. It's incredible the green matter you get off it. It's, like I say, it's one of the top quality. It's as good as sunflower or better, but it costs nothing. And it's really the most foolproof one. If you're going to grow apples here in East Tennessee, people say, get the windsap apple. Dude, you can't kill a windsap. And as soon as you plant them, a couple of years later, you're going to get apples. So, maybe Fuji apple is going to be a little more difficult. Granny Smith's might be a little more difficult. But if you're going to get a no-brainer apple tree on your property, get a windsap. Right? It's the same thing. Get the black-eyed peas. They're so easy to grow. And once you get that first taste of like, wow, we took this tray from a seed to something we can harvest in less than 10 days, 7 to 10 days, your mind's going to go in all different directions. And then you can start learning more about how to do microgreens. And if you go to trueleafmarket.com, they have a huge amount of free downloadable guides on how to grow all of this stuff. It costs you nothing except your time to go find out how to grow microgreens. Like these are the solutions. That's what, and Ransom talking about saving seeds and saving beans and things in jars. I look at a jar, a mason jar full of beans as a jar full of possible microgreens in addition to cooking it during a stew. Lentil beans are another one. Those things pop up like no time at all. Now, if you're going to go for split peas, obviously that's going to be food because they've already, busted the seed in half. So be a little discerning. Like if it's puffed up and it's been cooked in oil, that's not going to sprout. If you're getting split peas, they split it in half, so your pea is not going to sprout. Otherwise, anything goes. And go look around the supermarket shelves for beans and lentils and flax and all these kind of things. And I guess, Ransom, how much of that do you see around your place too? I mean, you're a little bit further out west, so obviously it's going to cater a little bit more toward, it's going to be a different type of, allotment in the supermarkets than we have way out here over east, So I'm sure you're seeing other types of bean choices out there that we don't see, like the flava beans and these kind of things.
Not really. We're kind of segregated out in the middle of the desert, and we only have Walmart or Lowe's to pick from. And I was saying that a couple of shows ago, they have removed all of the organic foods and the staple foods that I'm talking about buying. And they're already starting to show that they're gone. And that's because, people are realizing, hey, wait a minute, the shelves are short. They cut the hours by half. And now there's just less food in the shelves that they've, reduced in size. I don't know if that's going on everywhere or it's just here, but it's obvious that there's been an overall reduction of the lifestyle just for this town. I mean, since the dreaded vid, they cut the hours. It used to be 24 hours. The shelves were twice as high. They were twice as packed. There was more options. You had options between organic food and regular food. Now it's just Walmart brand and one other brand or something like that. And, then you have to pick through what's there. The meat is, well, you know what the meat's all about now. It's a bunch of, I can't say it on air, but it's
meat glue, man. Meat
science
glue.
projects. But they still offer, at least at our store. I mean, I don't know what we're going to do afterwards, but right now you still got organic and grass-fed beefalo, buffalo, and beef. That's where it's at.
Ransom, you're welcome out here anytime. Bring the family, bro. If it gets rough, see, that's what it is about trusting people, because I'll invite him out here to stay, and I'll take care of him and make sure he survives in his family. Is that trust? Can't buy that. Can't buy it. Anyway, thank you. Please remember to sign up for our newsletter, Mini Ice Age Conversations, oilseedcrops.org. Send you our show notes.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio.